Let's have a word of prayer, please. Our Father in heaven, thank you for the day that you have blessed us with and the time you've given us tonight to open up your word once again. We are thankful for it. We're thankful for the word. We're thankful for your Son. And as we read about these things in the Old Testament, as we read about the life of David and we read about all those who were faithful in the Old Testament as they looked forward to your Son, and they had faith in the coming Messiah. And we're thankful that he has come now, and we are thankful that he is our advocate even today. Father, we ask you please be with those who are traveling, those who are away from us. Be with those who may be sick under doctor's cares, various things like that. Just ask your blessings on each one of them. Thinking especially this evening as we think about Brenda's mother and with the frailties of life that she's enduring, and others that were mentioned Sunday as well, and others that we know of. Just ask your care upon them. We ask your care upon us tonight, throughout this week. And we are thankful. We are thankful that you are our protector. We are thankful that we can look to your Son as the author and finisher of our faith. And we just pray that you go with us, and we are thankful for your grace that you have, the unmerited favor that we know full well we do not deserve. Please forgive us of our sins. We pray all these things in your Son's name. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we're in 2 Samuel chapter 19 tonight. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 19. We finished last week looking at the death of Absalom, and as word comes to David that Absalom has passed, in 2 Samuel chapter 18 verse 33 says, "Then the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said thus, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place. Absalom, my son, my son." And chapter 19 begins with Joab getting word that David is inconsolable. So let's read verse 1 down through verse 8 of chapter 19. "And Joab was told, Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard it said that day, The king is grieved for his son. And the people stole back into the city that day, as people who are ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son. Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, Today you have disgraced all your servants who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends, for you have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants, for today I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now therefore arise, go out, and speak comfort to your servants, for I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night, and that will be worse for you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now. And then the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told all the people, saying, There is the king sitting in the gate. So all the people came before the king, for every one of Israel had fled to his tent. All right, so you know the question that should be asked. David is mourning. He is inconsolable. His son has died. And for one thing, let's start here. Why does Joab say what he says? What is Joab's reasoning? Joab tells him basically knock it off. But he has a reason. And so what's Joab's reason?
He wanted to wake him up.
He wanted to wake him up. Okay, what would happen if Joab says, if you don't knock this off?
The people were becoming discouraged with David as their king.
Okay.
Because of the way he was behaving, because he had actually, Absalom had been his enemy.
Yeah. It's like Absalom was trying to kill him. So Joab says, if you don't buck up here, you're going to lose the people. Joab there may be even more to it than that. When Joab says, if you don't do this, there in verse 7, I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night. What Joab is going to do in the coming chapters, and it starts getting into 1 Kings, when Adonijah presumes to be king, guess what Joab does? And I finally thought of a word. I was trying to think of a word the other day, by the way. Sorry, it's a tangent. Defect. Joab defects to Adonijah. And so I wonder if Joab, who is commander of the army, if he's not saying, if you don't get up right now, pull up your big boy pants, and go greet the troops, I'm going to lead them out of here. And guess who they're going to follow? It's like, I wonder if there's not a little bit of a thread there, perhaps, because that is what Joab does end up doing. He ends up defecting to Adonijah. He ends up following Adonijah. When David's... Anyway, that's 1 Kings, though. So, what do you think? Was Joab right, or should Joab have kept his mouth shut and let the king mourn?
That's right. I think he was right.
Pat thinks he was right. Anyone have any other thoughts? Regardless of whether he's right or wrong, David does take the counsel. So, whether he's right or wrong, David heeds it. He heeds the advice. We can understand David mourning. This is his son. But, when Joab is speaking to him, and Joab, you look at what Joab says. There in verse 5, today you've disgraced all your servants who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines. Why might Joab have mentioned that bit there at the end? What had Absalom done with those concubines? And I wonder if David, he had slept with those concubines. What Absalom had done, he had defiled them in front of all Israel. So I wonder if what Joab is saying, if Joab is not trying to remind, because if he's not trying to remind David of how wicked Absalom was. Because parents sometimes, myself included, when you look at your children, and Pat, just because you're the one talking, how old is Jerry?
39.
39. Now, when you look at him, do you see him as a 39-year-old? Or it's like,
I have to remind myself.
And sometimes when we look at our children, even though they may be adults, they may have made a lot of mistakes. It's like David remembered Absalom when he was a baby. And it's like, this is my boy.
Yeah, they're always your babies.
They're always your baby. And Joab's like, do you realize what he's done? Do you realize that he was trying to kill you? Do you realize that he slept with your concubines? Do you realize that he just staged a coup and you had to flee across the Jordan? It's like, you need to remember what he's done, because we all fought for you. And now it's like you would be happier if he actually lived and we all died. I can understand David mourning, but what one of the things, and I'll say this, David is in a unique position as king, in that sometimes when people are in positions of authority, or whether they're in positions, however you want to put it, where the public eye is on them, and you cannot mourn. There may be times, for example, my grandfather passed, right back, what year was it? Whatever year it was, doesn't matter what year it was. My grandfather was instrumental in my father obeying the gospel. Guess who ends up preaching Grandpa's funeral? It's my dad. You don't think my dad would have liked to have wept through that whole funeral? Of course he would have. What can he not do? It's like, you cannot weep. It's like he could not do it because he was the one teaching and preaching at the funeral. And so you have to hold it together. When all the eyes are on you, and again, David, it takes it to the nth degree. It's like, you're the king. Here, the battle's over. Should be a victory. It's turning into mourning. And Joab is like, all the eyes are on you. You have to go encourage the troops. You have to encourage the people or you're going to lose them. So, any other thoughts about that?
They probably had allowed him sometime.
Maybe. I don't know. Joab's not real big on patience. Whenever, when it says there in verse 1, and Joab was told. And so, and by the way, Pat, that point you made a couple weeks ago, we were talking about it. Joab, it never says he clues David in that he was the one who killed Absalom. And it's like, I have a feeling he just kept that to himself. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I think some of David's mourning, I had seen a thought that a lot of David's weaknesses were Absalom's weaknesses, except maybe exaggerated, but he
Yeah.
knew that he ultimately was the cause of a lot of this. Joab probably recognized he was pretty indulgent towards Absalom and stuff, and
Yeah.
who knows, maybe he never would have been punished, I don't know.
Yeah. You actually kind of see an example of this elsewhere, and it's Nadab and Abihu. When God strikes them dead, do you remember what? I can't remember if it's the Lord who tells Aaron or Moses tells Aaron, do not weep for them right now. He doesn't even say right now, he says, do not weep for them. And they have to drag those two fellas basically out of the place where they were, because it was, there they were as they offered strange fire. But it's like, you can't weep for them. It's like, you need to realize the Lord just punished them. And it would be real easy, it would be real easy to blame God and get angry at God. Another place where you see, it just occurs to me something similar like this, is when Uzzah puts his hand out to steady the ark and God strikes him dead. That account says, and David got angry. And it's like, you better check yourself, because if you get mad at God, it's like, God knew his heart and God struck him dead. God struck Nadab and Abihu dead, God struck Uzzah dead, and God is the one according, and I just went back and looked, back according to chapter 17, verse 14, the Lord had purposed to defeat Ahithophel to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. It's like, this is the Lord's doing. Anyone have anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Only that David had been chosen by God to be king.
Yeah.
He had a duty to fulfill that. And whether Joab thought in those terms or not, I don't know, but
Yeah.
he knew that David needed to straighten himself up. And I think that kind of woke David up to
Yeah.
what he was doing.
Yep, perhaps so. Anything else? Okay. Verse 9. Now all the people were in a dispute. Okay, remember where they are. They are not, when it says back in, talks about verse 3, and the people stole back into the city, that is not Jerusalem. They are not in Jerusalem. They're on the east side of the Jordan. They are in a place called Mahanaim, according to previous verses. That's chapter 17, verse 27. That's where they were camped out at, or not even camped out, but the city of Mahanaim. And so all the people were in distress throughout all the tribes of Israel, okay, saying, the king saved us from the hand of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king? Verse 11, so King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, who are in Jerusalem, saying, speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back, to his house? Since the words of all Israel have come to the king, to his very house. You are my brethren, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me continually in the place of Joab. So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man. So they sent this word to the king, return you and all your servants. And then the king returned and came to the Jordan. Judah came to Gilgal to go meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. Shimei, the son of Gera, Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him. And Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him, and they went over the Jordan before the king. Then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household to do what he thought good. Okay, and then it starts talking about some of the different individuals. Okay, so David could have just marched across the Jordan and just come back to Jerusalem. He doesn't do it. He stays where he's at. Because the bottom line is, if you don't have the people on your side, what good is it? It's like if you come back to Jerusalem and the people don't want you there, what is a king without his citizens, frankly? So he's staying put, and he's like, you guys are going to have to ask me to come back. All you guys joined Absalom, right? You chose Absalom over me. Now you are going to have to make the choice, and you're going to have to, you're going to have me back, more or less. And so, but all that begins with, there's a dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel. And they're all like, listen, this is what's happened. The king saved us from the hand of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines. We're not talking about Absalom. They're like, oh yeah, David was a good king. He saved us from the Philistines, and now he fled from the land because of Absalom. Verse 10, but now Absalom, oh yeah, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. And then they're like, now therefore, and it's like, for one thing, verse 9 and 10, who are they talking to? And basically what they're doing is they're talking amongst themselves. They're like, why hasn't David come back yet? Okay, is basically what's going on. And so they say, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king? So I don't know if they're talking to like their leaders or whoever it is. So the king, so David hears all that. That message gets to him, or news of that gets to him. He sends to Zadok and Abiathar, and he says, you need to talk to the men of Judah. Judah, it's like, that is David's tribe. Okay? David, Jesus, line of the tribe of Judah. It's like, that's my tribe. And so you go talk to those folks in Judah, and you say, you are my brethren, you're my bone, you're my flesh. Why are you the last, basically, to come get me? And so, and also say to Amasa. Now wasn't Amasa Absalom's general? I believe that's right. Isn't that right? He's Absalom's general. So David says, I'm going to keep you on. I will say this. David says, I'm going to keep you on. We talked about Amasa actually 2 weeks ago. Amasa is a relative of David's, just like Joab is a relative of David's. And David says, I'm going to keep you on as general. And that may have happened, except what does Joab do with Amasa? And the answer to that question is always, what did Joab do to whoever? The answer is always the same. He killed him. Okay, he's going to kill him. That's going to come up in chapter 20. But anyway, but for now, the message is talk to the general over there. Joab's on the east side of the Jordan. Talk to Amasa, who's over there, who's the general of that army. Talk to him and get him to sway the hearts of the men of Judah. And so that's what ends up happening, verse 14. So he talks to them, and they send word to the king, return you and all your servants. So the king returned, came to the Jordan, and people are there to meet him. Judah's there to meet him. Not only Judah, you also have those 1,000 men from Benjamin, because one of the people who's there is Ziba. Remember, Ziba was the servant of Saul, and Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. Now, what I want you to think about, though, because there's going to be an argument later on, and it's at the end of this chapter, actually. Because basically, all the rest of Israel is going to get mad at Judah and Benjamin and basically say, why have you done all this? And I think the answer to that is, before Judah does what they do, what was all Israel doing? You can talk about it all day long. You can talk about how you want David back. You can say this, you can say that. They weren't doing anything. Judah actually did something. Benjamin actually did something. Now I want you, in your mind's eye, I want you to think about, Judah and Benjamin, those two tribes, against, how many other tribes were there? 10 tribes. 12 tribes altogether. So it's 10 tribes versus 2 tribes. Now, what does that sound like? Do what, Nancy?
Divided kingdom. Divided
Beyond that.
kingdom.
The divided kingdom time. When it comes, when we start talking about the divided kingdom, and that's, by the way, happens in David's grandson's time, Rehoboam, and all of a sudden there's 10 tribes versus 2 tribes. And guess which 2 tribes it is? Benjamin and Judah. Even back here, there is animosity brewing between the northern tribes and the southern tribes, between the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. That we're not to the point of the divided kingdom, but there's some animosity there. So anyway, we'll read it, like I said, towards the end of the chapter. Okay, so the king now returns. The ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household and to do what he thought good. Questions or comments about any of that? How do you think Joab felt if Joab heard that promise to Amasa? Yeah, you're going to be commander of the army before me continually in place of Joab. I don't know if Joab knew it or not. But anyway, that's at least what David promised to Amasa. Or that was the message.
Why would he do that? Because Joab had actually stayed with him.
Let's read on for a second. The remainder of verse 18. Now Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king. Right? Shimei was one of them who comes. The last time we saw Shimei, what was he doing? He's the guy who was cursing the king and throwing stones at the king as David flees Jerusalem. It's Shimei who, was it Joab or was it the brother who says, it's Abishai, Joab's brother, who says, let me just kill him. Okay? So Shimei, who thought, surely David is done with the throne. Surely he'll never come back. And in short order, what has David done? He's come back. And now what's Shimei thinking?
He's going to kill me.
It's like, I better make haste and try to make amends. And it's like, you better believe it, buddy. And so Shimei, among all those who are like the first to greet him, Shimei is one of them. To his credit, it's like, you better do something. So Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. Then he said to the king, do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? And David said, what have I to do with you, you sons, notice the plural, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king swore to him. Pat, how did you phrase it about Joab? What did you say?
Why would he replace Joab?
Why would he replace Joab? That's
Joab
right.
had been, he didn't know, I don't think he knew that Joab killed Absalom. We don't know that he
Right.
didn't know, but it never says.
But I wonder,
Joab stayed with him.
to look at some of that language, he does know that Joab killed, who was it that he killed before? It was, who was it? Someone help me out.
Was it Mephibosheth?
No. Oh, I'd have to hunt for it. I'd have to hunt
Killed
for
Saul,
it.
didn't he?
Abner. Joab murdered Abner. And that was after David had basically made peace with Abner. And so I wonder, Joab's a hatchet man. That's what Joab is.
He's a man of action.
He's a man of action. He's a hatchet man. And just at the drop of a dime, he's like, let's kill him. Now, granted, here, we're not talking about Joab, we're talking about Abishai. But David says, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? They're all cut from the same cloth.
They were agreed on.
And I wonder if it's not all wearing thin on David. If it's like, you know what?
David was a warrior, but he really didn't like killing scenes.
And I'll say this. I was going back and looking, and we don't have time to do it, but I would encourage you to go back and look, starting from Goliath on, so all through the life of Saul, and see what sort of life David was living, because the Lord does eventually take care of Saul, but it takes, Mark, I ask you this all the time, how long did Saul reign?
40 years.
40 years. Right? Decades are going by in that time span. And when it's all said and done, who is it who kills Saul? It's not David. What I was looking for was even any battles between David's men, and Saul's men. And what you see is usually Joab saying, let's kill him, and David saying, I'm not going to do it. And it's like, wait a minute. When it finally came time to kill Saul, it's the Philistines. And so it kind of made me rethink about David. Now, after Saul, David is finally king, or at least recognized as king. Then you do start getting into like Ishbosheth, and you start getting into some of the others where you do see like David going out to battle. And so that's where you do see warrior David. But in the life of Saul, it's like David keeps saying, it's like, I'm not going to kill the Lord's anointed. Go ahead.
It seems like David goes the extra mile not to take vengeance on him.
Right.
He leaves vengeance to God.
Yep.
But when he has to go to battle, it's for the people of God, and then he's a
Right.
warrior.
Right. So anyway, it just kind of made me
You
rethink.
have to kind of respect that.
Yep, I think so. Because unlike, I think so, David, and one of the wonderful things about David, you can make the case David is very, I can't think of the word right now that I want to use. Can't think of the word well-rounded. And what I mean by that is,
Forgiving.
how would you describe David? What were his characteristics? What did he do? What did he do, and therefore how would you describe him? One, warrior.
He obeyed God.
He obeyed God. I mean, even more, kind of more specific than that. What is David known for in Scripture? Goliath. Go ahead, Michael. Okay. Let me put it another way. Do you think when he was cutting off Goliath's head, whack? Which, by the way, I wish they would illustrate that at BBS's. They never do. When he hacks off Goliath's head, do you think he sat down and he was writing poetry? And yet we know, what does he do elsewhere? It's like he wrote most of the Psalms. When we're first introduced to him, it's like he's a shepherd boy. And yet in the first time, or after that, he's with Saul, and what is he doing? He's a musician. So he's a musician, he's a poet, he's a shepherd. Is he also a warrior? Are there different facets of David? How many different facets are there of Joab?
One.
Just one. And to the hammer, what does everything look like? A nail. And Joab is, and I think with Joab and with his brothers, or his brother, the other one's dead, they're wearing thin. They're wearing thin. And it's like, it's good to have a hatchet man when you're on the run. And when you're talking about the army, it's good to have someone like that. How good is he in times of peace?
Can't trust him too much.
Can't trust him too much, that's for sure. So anyway, okay, so to Shimei now. And Shimei, to his credit, he comes and he falls down before David. I quoted in the handout Matthew 5, verse 25, and that's where, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, agree with your adversary quickly. And what does Shimei do? He makes haste. And he comes and he presents himself before David. So that's Shimei, and David swears to him, you shall not die. And we spoke about what happens to Shimei later on in Solomon's time, but that's that's for a later study. Now we have Mephibosheth, and we've already touched on Mephibosheth before, but we'll read the account again. Now Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was, when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said to him, Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, My lord, O my king, my servant deceived me, talking about Ziba. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God, therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore what right have I still to cry out any more to the king? And so the king said to him, Why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said you and Ziba divide the land. Then Mephibosheth said to the king, Rather let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. And so now we have the other side of the coin of the Ziba and Mephibosheth, what was happening there. Before Ziba, when David flees, Ziba meets David, and Ziba says what he says, and David believes him, frankly. But now he hears the other side of the coin. He hears Mephibosheth's reasoning, and we've spoken about it before. Any questions or comments about?
How long that was that he hadn't bathed or?
Long enough to be noticed, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's ever a time stamp given,
Had to be.
but there was some time at least. I mean, you read it and it's like, oh, it's just the next day, and it's like, I don't think it's the next day. That some time is going by. Questions or comments before we read about Barzillai? Okay, Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rohilim, crossed the Jordan with the king to escort him across the Jordan. And Barzillai was the fella earlier who had brought basically cots and basins and earthen vessels, brought beds, basins, earthen vessels, wheat, barley, all sorts of things, all sorts of supplies for David. So now Barzillai, here he is once again, came down before David crosses the Jordan. And so came down from Rohilim and went across the Jordan with the king to escort him across the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. And he had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. And the king said to Barzillai, Come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem. But Barzillai said to the king, How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old. Can I discern between the good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men or singing women? Why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king, and why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant, Chimham, let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. And the king answered, Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now whatever you request of me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and when the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. And I think that's just a lovely account. So what is David's offer to Barzillai?
Come with me, I'll take care of you.
And it's, Barzillai is from quite a ways away. I believe it's up north is where he's from. And so he's like, I'll provide for you. Come to Jerusalem. And what's Barzillai's response?
I'm not worth it.
And he's very tactful, but his reasoning is pretty much, I'm an old man. And it's like, do what? He doesn't want to be a burden. And I think ultimately what it is, because he does say that, what does he say about his mother and father?
He wanted to go be buried where they were.
It's like, let me go back home. I would like to die at home, is basically what he's saying. And it's like he appreciates David. He loves David, and David loves him. And David is basically just saying, come with me. It's like you provided for me, now let me provide for you in Jerusalem. Barzillai is rich. He doesn't need provided for. He was able to provide for David. It's like not everybody could do that, but Barzillai could. You might think about the verse in the New Testament, let those who are rich be rich in good works. It's like, here's a guy who is rich, and he was rich in good works. And so now David says, let me repay you. And Barzillai says, just let me cross the Jordan a little ways with you, and then let me go back home. Let me pass at home. And he says there in verse 35, and I'll just ask if you sympathize with this, when he says, can I taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear the sound? Can I hear any longer the voices of singing men or singing women? And what he's saying is basically, I'm not getting all that much enjoyment out of life. You get to that point where it's like, I can't hear anything. It's like, I can't taste the feast anymore. And it's like, when Solomon writes about this phase of life in Ecclesiastes, when he uses that metaphorical language, when he writes about, let's see, when he says, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth before the difficult days come, when you say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun and light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men bow down, when the grinders cease because they are few and those that look through the windows grow dim, the doors are shut in the streets and the sound of grinding is low when one rises up the sound of a bird. Some of these are metaphors. He says, while the sun, the light, the moon, and the stars are not darkened. And what he's talking about is like when the grinders cease, he's talking about when your teeth fall out. And it's what he's talking about. It's like you start losing your teeth, and how pleasant is it to eat anymore? It's like when you're having to get up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, you're not sleeping like you should. You're not resting like you should. You're not able to work like you should. What Barzillai is saying is like, I don't get much joy out of life anymore. What I'm looking forward to is dying at home. Let me go back home. And what does David say? Godspeed. And he kisses him, verse 30, and he returns to his own place.
Was this Chimon like maybe one of his servants, you think?
I think it was one of Barzillai's servants from the language, and he's basically somewhat of a token, and it's the kindness that you showed me. I'm sending a representative, make him your servant.
I'm thinking maybe Chimon had something to offer. He didn't thought he had anything to offer David.
Yeah. So anyway, so they go on. All right, now we get to the quarrel. So the king went on to Gilgal, and Shimon went on with him, and all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen you away, and brought the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan? So all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is a close relative of ours, why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 shares in the king, therefore we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. The next chapter is another rebellion, by the way. It's like, welcome back, David. So what are your thoughts on Israel and Judah, along with Benjamin? What are your thoughts on it?
Competitive tribes.
Do what?
Competitive tribes.
And so they gripe, and what's Judah's response? There in verse 42. I think there's a pivotal sentence right there. A question they ask. What are you mad about? It's like you wanted David to come back. Well, what is he? He's back. Why can't you be happy? And sometimes when people are upset and they're mad and they're angry And people get up and they lead the song, angry words, oh, let them never, trying to bring peace to a congregation. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to say, what are you upset about? And you know what, 9 times out of 10, you know what the answer is?
They don't even.
And it's just silly. And at that point, what should Israel do? Do what, Rudy?
Shut up.
Yeah. Shut up. And it's like, what are you upset about? What do you have a bee in your bonnet about? Get over it. You wanted David to come back. David's back. What should you be doing? Throw a party. It's like, rejoice. Be happy. Tell the king, it's good to see you again. Sorry we voted for Absalom in the last election. We were dunderheads for that. Please don't kill us. That's what they should have said. And instead, they get mad at Judah. And Judah's like, what are you getting mad at me about? This almost same thing actually happens. We won't go back and look at it, but look at the end of Judges. This almost same thing happens in the life of, I want to say maybe in the life of Gideon, where, it was when after the Trump, it's Gideon, right, with the pots and the smashing the pots and all that. Right after that, let me go back and see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. When that happens, I think it's after that. Because that has to do with Ephraim. All the men of Israel gathered together. This is at the end of Judges chapter 7. Because Ephraim was not there at that point when those few men with Gideon. Remember, Gideon only had 300 guys. And so when it's all done, Ephraim sends a message saying, well, why didn't you call us to go to the battle? It's like, why don't you just get the bee out of your bonnet and be happy? And you know what the answer to that is? Here's the great truth. Some people just won't be happy by their own choice. Some people just won't be happy. I should say they choose not to be happy. One of the daily videos coming up, Jesus comes down the Mount of Transfiguration. There's an argument happening at the base of the Mount of Transfiguration because the disciples cannot cast a demon out. They can't cast a demon out, okay? They ask Jesus, why is this? Jesus says, this kind only come out with prayer and fasting. Okay? So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of a humbling experience. It's so humbling that in the very next verse, they start arguing amongst themselves about who the greatest is. And it's like, are you kidding me? In the very next verse, there was someone who was casting out a demon, and guess what the disciples do? We forbid him because he does not follow us. Oh, so you're fighting amongst yourselves, and you're fighting with outsiders, and then the Samaritan village, in the very next verse, the Samaritan village doesn't accept Jesus, and what did James and John say? Burn him out. And it's like, and Jesus says, you don't know what kind of spirit you're of. And he's like, I did not come to destroy men's lives. I came to save them. Don't forget your purpose. And I make the point in the video, James and John, and that's the thing, people can change if they want to. How do James and John, the sons of thunder, become the Apostle John who talks about love so much? A change has to happen. Because before that change happens, James and John, what did they like to do? They like to fight. They like to fight with insiders. They like to fight with outsiders. They like to fight with anybody who they see. Sort of like a certain Joab. And it's like, let's just kill him. And the Lord is like, have you forgotten what I'm here for? And it's like, have you forgotten what my purpose is? And sometimes folks just like to fight. And the Lord says, we need to fight the good fight of faith. But we better be real careful. Anyway, you might think about it. Here these folks are, and they come to Judah, and Judah's like, get lost. It's like, come on, be happy. It's like, be happy, he's back. This whole chapter is coming to an end. And it's like, hey, basically, when Absalom comes after David, what could David have done? He could have stayed right there and fought. And it would have been civil war, and it would have been carnage. You can ask our fellow historian here, you know how many people died in the Civil War? How many soldiers died? More died in the Civil War, I believe, than all the other wars combined. Isn't that right? That's what could have happened in Israel. Now instead, how many died? There was quite a few, but not like that. Because David fled peacefully. And he comes back now, and what should Israel have said? Welcome home. We are sorry. They should have said what Shimei did. We are sorry for what we did. Please come back and serve as our king. So, appreciate everyone's help tonight. Good to see everyone. And we will pick up with some of those questions and then the next lesson, which I will have on Sunday.